Good morning, everybody. Once again, coming to you a little earlier than usual so I can get this up and people can see it before the stream starts this morning. A couple hours away now, we're going to open up day 3, which is also known as eventually day 1 of actual free agency. It opens at 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific. So 4 hours after the stream starts, we're actually going to get into real free agency. Not to say that the stuff that's happened over the last couple of days is fake. I think pretty much everything that's happened over the last couple of days will be made official. Nevertheless, today is, in some ways, you could say the big day where things get finalized. So, I've been thinking about my last couple days on stream, streaming basically 8 hours a day on average for the last 2 days. Thinking about the things that are getting asked about the Seahawks right now. And there are a couple of things that come up a lot in these chats. There are a couple of things that come up in the comments a lot. The things that people want to talk about right now that are pressing on them more than anything else. So I wanted to take this video to address probably the most frequent talking point with the Seahawks in my comments in my chat lately. And that is quite simply, how does the free agency that the Seahawks have had so far affect the draft? Specifically, there are quite a few people who have commented in a chat or video something to the effect of signing Dre'Mont Jones and signing Jarran Reed. Does that mean we're not going to... Does that mean we're trying to not draft Jalen Carter? Does that mean we're trying to go a different direction in the draft and that's why we're signing these guys? I wanted to talk about this, and this is something that can apply to pretty much any free agent we sign, but it, I think, makes itself very clear when it comes to this particular topic. Are the Seahawks trying to make sure they don't draft Jalen Carter by taking care of business in free agency on the defensive line? Let's think about this. As you can see on screen here, I have 2 defensive line depth charts. One is the defensive line depth chart we would have had 3 days ago. The other is the one we have today. And I want to compare and contrast these 2 depth charts to explain why I pretty firmly believe what we have done so far in free agency has absolutely, positively no bearing on what the Seahawks do during the draft. There are moves we could make that could, but not these ones. Okay, so here is the depth chart as of 3 days ago, right before free agency legal tampering opened. This is a 3-4, by the way, and yes, Pete Carroll has already kind of doubled down on the new defense, the Vic Fangio stuff, and it seems like we are going to stick with it. And if you don't believe that, Dre'Mont Jones and Jarran Reed both played in a 3-4 defense last year. And I believe Dre'Mont Jones has played in a 3-4 defense his entire career. So it would be weird to sign him and Reed if you're going to switch back to a 4-3. Those guys seem better suited for a 3-4, particularly right now when it comes to Reed, because I know he's been good in a 4-3 before. But as of right now, it seems like Reed is best off in a 3-4. So, left defensive end right now would be Quinton Jefferson. He would be your starter. As of 3 days ago, As of 3 days ago, the starter at left defensive end would have been Quinton Jefferson, and his backup would have been Gerard Hewitt, who has played in like 1 or 2 NFL games in his career. The nose tackle would have been Al Woods and Brian Monet, who is injured and probably not going to be ready to play at the start of the year. He might not play the whole year. We don't know. And the right defensive end, the starter would have been Shelby Harris, who, I mean, good player, of course. Not a great player at this point, but a good player. And he would not have had a backup. There would have been no real backup on the roster. Now let's jump forward to what it is today. As of right now, what is the defensive line? We have swapped out Quinton Jefferson for Dre'Mont Jones. Now, Dre'Mont Jones is definitely a better player. He's younger, he's got more upside, he's more explosive, he makes more plays. He's definitely better than Quinton Jefferson. So, yeah, we did improve in that area. But the backup remains the same, Gerard Hewitt. We still don't have anybody better to put on that side. Nose tackle situation has stayed exactly the same. Al Wood starting, Brian Monet, who is probably not going to be ready to play this season. We'll be lucky if he's able to play at all this year, I think. Backing him up. And we have swapped out Shelby Harris for Jarran Reed. The only thing that has changed in terms of quantity is Miles Adams is now backing up Reed on the left side. Miles Adams was tendered, so therefore he actually gets added to this depth chart when he wasn't there earlier. So other than that, we're just swapping out one piece for another piece. Quentin Jefferson gets kicked out. Draymond Jones gets put in. Shelby Harris gets booted out. Jarran Reed gets put in. Now, let's think about the commitment here for a second. Quentin Jefferson had 1 year left on his deal. All right? 1 year left. Draymond Jones signed a 3-year deal. So, yes, there's a longer-term, more significant, more expensive commitment to Draymond Jones. But we all know, and if you look at Draymond Jones' contract, it's already been made clear. I'll probably talk about this more a little bit later. The commitment is really only for 2 years because the out after 2 years is incredibly painless. It's like $6 million dead to save 17, 18 million against the cap. So the commitment to a left defensive end is bigger and longer, but it's really only longer by 1 year. Jarran Reed. Now, Jarran Reed signed a 2-year deal. But I think we all know that the Reed contract is probably only going to go for 1 year. It's probably a one and done. It's already been said that some of his money is tied up in incentives. So the actual contract is probably 2 years, $8 million. So you're probably looking at a situation where the first year there's a cap hit of like 3, maybe 3.5 million. And then the second year is the 5 million cap hit. And there's also a way to release him and only give him like maybe 1.5 or maybe 2 million. So really it's a 1 year deal for about 5 million that splits across 2 years. So yes, the contract is 2 years, but really it's a 1 year deal. Unless Reed kills it and plays way above his head, there's no way we're going to bring him back in 2024, I don't think. Unless his contract is like front loaded, which would be really weird. So basically, he's under the same situation as Shelby Harris was, because Shelby Harris had 1 year left on his deal. So what I'm trying to say here is that the commitment at right defensive end didn't really change. If anything, it got less. Shelby Harris's final year on his deal was over $12 million. Reed's entire contract is not even close to being worth that much. It only comes close if he meets all of the incentives that are in the contract. We don't know exactly what those incentives are, but even if he meets all of them, it's still not as much. So really, at the right defensive end position, nothing's changed except you've improved your depth slightly in that you actually have depth, but you've still got Gerard Hewitt playing a significant role when he's never really been much of a player in the NFL before. You've still got a kind of lackluster starter. I mean, Jarran Reed, maybe I was a little harsh on him yesterday, but he's not a star. He's not a stud. He's not some great player. He can be a decent player. He's got some stuff to him, but he's not great. So what I'm trying to say is this. If you thought the Seahawks needed a player like, say, Jalen Carter before free agency, nothing has really changed. The only change of any significance is instead of having a, how should I put this, star defensive lineman that is only a star by a technicality, you have a genuine star defensive end. That's true. Shelby Harris was the best player on our defensive line previously, I think, especially with Al Woods getting older. Now Draymond Jones is. And Draymond Jones is better than Shelby Harris. And yes, there is a bigger commitment to him than there was to any defensive end we had on the roster before free agency. But it's kind of the same thing, guys. Jay Reed, is probably going to be a slightly better version of Quentin Jefferson this year. He's going to be Quentin Jefferson. He's going to be a little bit less effective as a pass rusher, but he's going to be way better as a run defender. That's probably the case. Draymond Jones is going to be rich man's Shelby Harris. He's going to be all around a better player because he's more explosive. He makes more plays in the backfield. He's more disruptive. Honestly, he's probably a little bit worse against the run, but whatever. Like, he's still an overall better player. Not by a ton, but by a decent amount. So really, what has changed when all that's really happened here is that you've released 2 defensive linemen and you brought in 2 defensive linemen. You've gotten probably a little bit better overall, but you still have a huge problem with your reserves. You still have a backup nose tackle who is probably not going to be able to play this year, by the way, and if he does, it probably won't be week 1. Remember, he got hurt kind of late in the year. You have a starting nose tackle who is very old and can't be counted on to play more than, I'd say, half the season if you decide to bring him back. So, to answer the question of, is Jalen Carter still on the menu because of the Draymond Jones and Jerron Reed signings? Yeah, he absolutely is. Nothing should have changed. If you liked him before, there's no reason to not like him now. By the way, just for fun, even though I don't think this is worth discussing, I did the exact same thing with the hypothetical 4-3 defensive line, and as you can see, the only thing that's changed is the 3-tech position. We went from Shelby Harris and Quentin Jefferson to Draymond Jones and Jerron Reed, and I misspelled Jerron here, I just realized. But it's the same thing, basically. We add Miles Adams' depth, but what has really changed here? We haven't massively improved our defensive line here. We haven't made any monster commitments. Reed is probably one and done. Draymond Jones is probably a 2-year commitment right now. So, yeah, if you thought we needed Jalen Carter before, I don't really think much has changed. We've gotten a little bit better on the defensive line. Little bit. So, my final take so far this offseason has not changed our draft situation one bit. See you guys in stream in a little bit. Let me know what you think. Peace out. Go Hawks.